Just last week, a federal judge ruled that the lawsuits that Dominion had filed against Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, and Mike Lindell can continue. So as you may recall, Dominion sued Powell, Giuliani, and Lindell for defamation. I believe they were claiming $1.3 billion in damages on each of those claims. And the defendants, so Powell, Giuliani, Lindell, you want to see how many times I can say them in a row because I'm going to say a bunch. They filed a motion to dismiss, trying to get rid of these lawsuits, and the judge ruled against them. They lost on their motion to dismiss, and they can continue. Of course, this had to do with what they were saying about the 2020 election. I wonder, though, with what's going on right now with Afghanistan and COVID and all this, do you ever wonder if President Biden's like, maybe President Trump did win? Maybe he just, I don't know. This has been a rough week, hasn't it? But anyway, let's distract ourselves from COVID and Afghanistan, and let's talk about Sidney Powell and Dominion, because that's going to be great stuff. So anyway, now the judge who ruled on this was Judge Carl Nichols, and he was a Trump appointee. So hopefully he was objective and really looking into this and being careful. And it seemed like it, as I looked through the opinion, that he really was, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, as it were, to make sure that he was careful with his ruling on this. So generally, the defendants, they made a number of arguments as to why their statements were protected, why they should be able to get this thing dismissed, and other problems like that. We're not going to dig into all the details. But we are going to talk about some of the statements that the judge made in ruling against this motion to dismiss, because I don't think, it's definitely not telegraphing a very good message to the defendants on how this case is going to go from this judge. Did I mention that this opinion was 44 pages long? That's right. I could have been watching Bachelor in Paradise, and David Spade was actually on it. But no, I was reading this for you, so you're welcome. So they made a number of arguments here. Some of the arguments that the defendants were making was that the court couldn't exercise personal jurisdiction over them. They were arguing that this should be transferred to Texas. They also were arguing that it couldn't be a defamation claim because they were just making statements of opinion, not fact. They also argued that Dominion had not pleaded actual malice. Now, the legal standard for motion to dismiss, which is important to keep in mind, is that on a motion to dismiss, the court must take the facts and basically assume all the facts in the complaint are true, and then any inferences that might come from the facts, they also have to take those in favor of the plaintiff, because the defendant is trying to get this kicked on a motion to dismiss. So anyway, that's kind of procedurally where we're at, and it is important. Let's look at some of these statements from the court. So Powell, she was making the argument that, hey, what I said couldn't be defamatory because it was clearly a statement of opinion and not a statement of fact. And she was also saying that she was talking about legal theories made in the context of pending and impending litigation. Those were a couple of her arguments. And the court gave the basic rule. They said for a statement to be actionable as defamatory, it must at least express or imply a verifiably false fact about the plaintiff. Okay, that's important. A verifiably false fact about the plaintiff. So this is from the opinion, and this is the judge talking about one of the core issues, which is whether it was she said something that was a verifiably false fact, or whether it was just an opinion. So the judge said, the question then is whether a reasonable juror could conclude that Powell's statements expressed or implied a verifiably false fact about Dominion. This is not a close call. To take one example, Powell has stated publicly that she has evidence from the mouth of the guy who founded Dominion admitting that he can change 1 million votes, no problem at all. She told audiences that she would tweet out the video. These statements are either true or not. Either Powell has a video depicting the founder of Dominion saying he can change 1 million votes, or she does not. Do you want another example? Because the judge gave another one. He actually gave several more, and here's just one of the other ones he gave. To take another example, Powell has stated that she could hardly wait to put forth all the evidence on Dominion, starting with the fact that it was created to produce altered voting results in Venezuela for Hugo Chavez. Again, this statement is either true or it is not. Either Dominion was created to produce altered voting results in Venezuela for Hugo Chavez, or as Dominion alleges, it was not. And then the judge says, in sum, Dominion has adequately alleged that Powell made a number of statements that are actionable because a reasonable juror could conclude that they were either statements of fact or statements of opinion that implied or relied upon facts that are provably false. Powell and Lindell, they both argued that Dominion had failed to allege that they made those statements with actual malice. And what that means is knowledge that they were false or with reckless disregard of whether they were false or not. Now, in talking about this actual malice argument, here's one statement from the judge. While it is true that evidence of ill will is insufficient by itself to support a finding of actual malice, Dominion has proffered much more. For the reasons discussed, Dominion has adequately alleged that Powell made her claims knowing that they were false or at least with serious doubts as to their truthfulness. Now, the court talked a little bit about Mike Lindell, and here's from one section in the opinion talking about Mike Lindell. The judge said that Lindell, like Powell, relied on the forensic expert who had provided materially false information in support of his claims of vote manipulation and who had claimed that George Soros, President George H.W. Bush's father, the Muslim Brotherhood, and leftists all had a role in forming the Nazi deep state in the 1930s. And I believe the court said about that as a preliminary matter, a reasonable juror could conclude that the existence of a vast international conspiracy that is ignored by the government but proven by a spreadsheet on an internet blog is so inherently improbable that only a reckless man would believe it. As some evidence, Mike Lindell had proffered this spreadsheet that supposedly showed voter manipulation. This is what the judge said about that spreadsheet. As for the spreadsheet, Lindell tweeted as evidence that President Trump got around 79 million votes to 68 million for Biden. Dominion alleges that the spreadsheet is obviously fake, and particularly the complaint alleges that although the spreadsheet purports to list IP addresses for election hackers and their targets, the listed target IP addresses are actually the addresses for the website of a county in a swing state, not for a voting machine or device. And according to Dominion, the MAC addresses in the spreadsheet, which should identify the specific devices involved in the purported hacks, are not even MAC addresses that exist. So again, those particular things were alleged in the complaint, which those facts are going to be taken as true for the purposes of this motion to dismiss. Okay, so Dominion, they get to continue with their lawsuit against Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, and Mike Lindell because they lost on their motion to dismiss. All right? Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.